Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And let's say another week. I guess did we skip last week? No, we didn't. We had a show last week.
We skipped the week before, yeah.
I can't tell anymore. Like, I don't know what day of the week it is ever. I don't know what month we're in. And it's weird because I'm still going to work. It's not like I'm one of these, I got laid off and I just can't tell the days apart, which is understandable. But I just, Yeah.
I mean, when you're working during all this shit, things blur together in like another sort of nightmare way. Where it's like, even on your days off, you're thinking about work, probably. If you're anything like me, spending way too much time wondering about your fucking bullshit job for a bullshit company. And I'm not bitter. Don't
you don't sound
don't think that I'm in a really, really fucking bad mood more so than I usually am when it comes to corporations today. This is I'm at peace.
Peace, yeah.
Anyway, but we don't do this show to dwell on the bad times, the hard times.
Well, yeah, we do. That's a lie. That's exactly why we do. But we do it to dwell on other people,
we try to
people's bad times.
No, these are the bad times. We talk about other bad times and other bad people. Times that have usually come and gone. It's it's pretty rare that we have a story that ends with and the shit is still happening.
Yeah. That's interesting. I've not even really considered looking for something. I think the closest one back in what we call season 1, I think it was back then when we were still doing 2 topics per show. I remember doing a topic on some really shitty loan shark that turned out to be a killer and whatever, but bungled the whole thing. And that was relatively recent. Some of the people in that story are still, alive and kicking today. And that made me more nervous than any show we've ever done because it's now we're going to get the we're suing you for slander or libel or whatever.
Know how fucking hard I would laugh if we ever got a cease and desist on anything? I'd just write back lol, you had to listen to our show. Haha.
Thanks for the view, sucker.
Fucking dumbass. Yeah, I'll totally take that episode down. I'm sure the courts will be chomping at the bit to hear your case, dipshit.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'd probably let them take me to court just so that they could play it in
to
front
our
of them.
Biggest audience.
Yeah.
That would be our live show. We would just get on stage and then play an episode off a laptop or something and just sit there while it plays.
Me just occasionally adding my
That was a good bit. This Ben is a funny guy.
So, but anyway, yeah, we don't do a whole lot of present day stuff. We've had a few that were kind of modern. Today is not that. Today is more in our wheelhouse of
old dirtbags.
Kind of. This one's not. It's urban legends, basically. American urban legends. I've got 3 of them. It's a trio of legends.
A triple header.
So I wanted to say fiction because urban legends are pretty, but some of this there's some reality woven in here.
I'm sorry, this fucking cat. This is turning into an ongoing thing on this show, but everything he does makes a sound now.
Pisses you off. Yeah.
It's just he can't walk anymore without what the fuck?
You and your cat, it reminds me of Peter Griffin and the Chicken Guy, if you ever watched Family Guy.
It's becoming that kind of relationship. I see him and there's no love and look at the kitty anymore. It's how much can this thing eat?
How much you got?
Yeah, fucking for real. It's a fucking challenge for him. But yeah, okay, you got 3 stories. I assume the cat is a monster in one of them, but we'll get to it.
The first one I'm going to start with, it's not quite a cat, but it's close. And that's the Bunny Man of Clifton, Virginia.
I have heard of this, but I don't know anything about it.
You've probably heard. I wouldn't be surprised if you've heard of all of these, or just at least the names.
Second one, but, I did this.
This one, I always worry about that, but I don't think so. But anyway, so the Bunny Man. This is out of Clifton, Virginia. Says in the early 1900s, the area around Clifton, Virginia, was growing, but the number of homes as the number of homes increased, the residents became increasingly concerned with the nearby asylum, a key staple in any legend. So in 1904, there was enough pressure that the asylum closed its doors and shipped all of its patients to the nearby Lorton Prison, which is good. We've covered that before, how great we are with mental patients, even today, but especially back then. It's like, put them in the jail. That'll work.
Right, but we'll see what happens.
But as one of the prisoner buses, I wrote prisoner buses. I guess they're supposed to be patients, but like I just said, there's very little difference back in 1900.
Yeah, they treated them like prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But as one of the buses approached the Colchester overpass, the vehicle swerved, running off the road before overturning. All of the patients were quickly accounted for, except for one, of course,
who had merged with a bunny.
That was Douglas Grifton, and he was never found. Though shortly after the crash, locals began finding skinned and butchered rabbits in the area. And so it was assumed that Douglas was surviving off it, killing rabbits and eating them in order to survive. Which, I guess is what you should do if you're living out in the wild. So, I guess if Douglas would have kept to himself, the townspeople may have simply forgotten about him and just been like, oh, that Douglas eating rabbits. But unfortunately, one Halloween night, a group of teenagers were hanging out near the bridge, and suddenly they saw a bright light. Before they knew what happened, they had been strung up from the bridge and then gutted, just like all the rabbits. So now legend states that if you visit the bridge at midnight on Halloween, the Bunny Man may just show up and butcher you.
Or I'll butcher him, huh?
Yeah.
Think about that.
But I call bullshit on that for a number of reasons. First, if the kids were hung up and butchered, then how the hell did anybody know that they saw a bright light first? If you're going to make up details about an urban legend and the death of a kid, you have to have a survivor. Otherwise, I
know. You just have to...
A very good detective. He's
yeah.
I ascertained by these skinned bodies that there was a flash of light, and before they knew what happened...
That's the only thing that can stop me.
Probably the biggest thorn in the side for this story is that the asylum in or around Clifton never actually existed. It's pretty easy to like look up the records and be like, oh yeah, this thing wasn't a thing. Also, the prison that they were being supposedly driven to wasn't built until 1906. And then thirdly, the likelihood of a bus being used to transport patients in 1904 was basically nil. I looked that up because I was like,
we used the leashes back then.
But then it said 1904, and it was like buses. I'm like, wasn't the first like car on sale here in like the early 20s? Or I always forget when exactly the Model T hit, but buses seemed odd for me, so I looked it up. And technically, like somebody in Europe, some guy had invented a steam engine bus in like 1803. So technically, there were contraptions like that around, but they were not a common. You didn't just load up the busload of patients and move them somewhere. That said, the Bunny Man legends...
The Money Man.
Money Man. Sorry, that's my nickname. I got it confused.
When does that become applicable?
I don't know. That's one of the fun things about working in insurance is everybody comes in and people treat me like that. They'll be like, "Oh, you're the guy with all the money." It's like, where the fuck is it? Can you?
You're the guy with thousands of dollars to repair my car.
It's like, yeah, nope, that's the wrong guy here. Anyway, the legend might actually have some basis in reality, though it actually seems to stem from a pair of incidents in 1970, which, in my opinion, these are way better than that, like, really generic-ass urban legend, like, escaped mental patient from a bus. So the first incident involved a cadet named Robert Bennett and his then fiancee. He was on leave from his Army base. And they were driving home from a football game. It says around midnight, when they decided to stop in Fairfax, Virginia, to visit his uncle. And so they parked their car in an open field across the street from his uncle's house, which all of that sounds a little suspicious to me. I think they were up to something a little different. Unless it's normal in 1970 to stop at midnight to visit your uncle and then park in a field instead of pulling into the driveway. But while sitting in the vehicle, probably not doing anything inappropriate, the passenger side window suddenly shattered. Of course, that startled them. They turned to see a man dressed all in white wearing something on his head. Bennett apparently insisted that it was bunny ears. Though his wife said it was some sort of, I forget the word they used, a tall hat, but basically a Klan hood, which makes way more sense to me. But the man was shouting at them about trespassing, something, it's just your typical, like, angry man shouts at cloud stuff.
Yeah.
But, they didn't really stick around to find out exactly what he was yelling about, given he had just shattered their window. And so they, took off. But after they drove away, they discovered that there was a hatchet laying on the floorboard. So the dude had, like, thrown a hatchet through the fucking window.
That's pretty scary.
Yeah. And especially it was the woman sitting in the passenger seat. So
also completely foolish when you're outnumbered. You threw away your weapon.
Right. And then they drove away with it. So now you lost your... So, not only did they successfully trespass, but now you're down one hatchet.
Yeah, now you're fucked.
Yeah.
Like, even if that connected, that dude has your hatchet now.
Right. So a few weeks after that incident, a security guard named Paul Phillips was making his rounds when he discovered a man standing on the front porch of a home that was currently under construction. So it was a vacant home. Sounds like it was pretty well done. Like it was more than just a frame, but it just wasn't finished. But this dude was standing on the porch. He appeared to be in his early 20s, but he was wearing a white, gray, and black bunny suit. And he was also brandishing a long-handled axe, which he was using to chop at one of the porch posts. So, your normal, like, Friday nights in Fairfax, Virginia. Phillips could hear him shouting something about trespassing and that if he came any closer, he'd chop his head off. So he did not come any closer. Yeah.
And then he did an electric slide closer.
Slide. You can't get me if I'm dancing, bunny. So
hard to hit an axe. Hard to chop me with an axe when I'm grooving back and forth.
Oh shit! He knows the words to this song. He knows which way I'm about to move.
Fuck!
Cheat codes. So that's really the like extent of the incidents. Like 2 run-ins with some lunatic wielding an axe and wearing a bunny suit. But that's really all the run-ins with a lunatic in a bunny suit and an axe that you need.
Maybe Bunny Man is kind of like, it's like that Florida Man joke, where it's like, every news report, it's like, Florida Man does this stupid thing. And so, like, maybe Florida Man and Bunny Man, they're just the ideas of, like, these people. Like, there's not one Bunny Man. There's just
or
a few
Bunny Man and
men.
Florida Man are the same man. It's just he's got a vacation home up in, like, Virginia.
Every Bunny Man is probably a Florida man, but not every Florida man is a Bunny Man.
It's a bunny, yeah, it's true. Yeah. It's like the square and rectangle thing.
Yeah.
So anyway, those stories, of course, those 2 incidents hit the local papers, and that's when the legend of the Bunny Man really seemed to take off. But like I said, then it got turned into this like generic ass thing about an escaped mental patient.
Which is a really boring origin story for like a crazy murder man or whatever.
Well, like I said, I like these 2 stories better as like a jumping off point. Like just randomly one day in the 70s, some unhinged dude in a bunny suit starts like chopping at people with an axe. Yeah. And then you can grow it from there into something else. But,
well, I mean, you got to do the horror movie thing. It's like as soon as you take the mask off and try to reveal the origins of these things, like they're not scary anymore.
That's true too.
So it's way scarier to me that there's just some fucking dude out there in a bunny suit who might fucking chuck a hatchet through your fucking window.
That's what makes it so terrifying is he actually, and And these stories, for all accounts and purposes, or as I can find, like this couple that got attacked in the car, they're still alive, according to the article I was reading. And you can, interview them, and it says they don't particularly like talking about the incident, but they'll confirm that it did happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's totally more scary is that some real person out there was dressed as a bunny and actually, wasn't just threatened them, it was chucked a fucking axe through the window first. That was his hello. That was his opener.
Howdy, neighbor.
That's the thing. Maybe it's just some guy that's he loves axes and he's completely misunderstood. And you got to imagine if you're wearing a bunny suit, they've got those fur glove mitten things. Maybe the axe slipped out of it. He's
what if
look
he
at
was
my
just,
oh shit.
He was just a furry into axe throwing, and he fucked up, and he was super embarrassed about it.
And he wasn't yelling about trespassing. He's like, I thought you were just passing through. I didn't mean to hit you. Oh my God, are you okay?
Yeah, he was just trying to apologize, but they just saw a fucking dude in a bunny suit, got scared, and drove off. And he's like, oh, fuck. My
and
favorite
then,
attribute.
when he was on the porch, he was it was one of those things where, he was awkward and he was just chopping. He's like, I can't believe I almost hit a woman with this axe. This fucking, I wish I could just quit throwing this axe. And then, he's just a misunderstood bunny guy. I like it. But the other thing that was really kind of made me laugh was that the bridge from the original, from the stupid mental asylum, whatever part of the legend, the made up, is an actual bridge. And it got to the point where this urban legend became so well known, and it was supposed to be if you went there at midnight on Halloween. So many people started showing up on Halloween trying to find the Bunny Man ghost that the local authorities or whatever, for the weeks surrounding Halloween, they have to close off that area and restrict access to the roads because it was just becoming too much of a problem with everybody coming in, which is hilarious to me when that bridge actually has nothing to do with anything. It just got randomly woven into this legend.
But bridges are cool, and you can
in fairness, it's a creepy looking bridge because it is out in the middle of nowhere. You can look it up. Yeah. It's not hard to find.
So yeah.
So that's legend number 1, Bunny Man.
I think, like I said, I had heard about that before, but I don't think I ever dug too deep because you just have that blanket origin story of crazy guy, bus wrecked, and now he's in the woods forever.
Yeah, like I said, I was disappointed because this one, out of the 3, this one's when I kind of teased at the beginning that there's a kernel of truth. This is the only one that there's a kernel of truth. The other 2 are very classic urban legend, ghost stories. But so this one has some interest there, and then you completely ruin it by, like I said, that's the most generic,
yeah.
And then to not even try to make it work, be oh, the bus crash, whoever originally came up with the legend behind this was obviously they had just watched The Fugitive or something. And they're yeah, this bus crashed and he crawled away and survived and nobody could find him. It's but anyway, so the next one is the death ship of I think it's pronounced Platte River. It's Platte. So I'm gonna say Platte River. It's in Wyoming. So in 1862, a trapper by the name of Leon Weber was doing trapper stuff, whatever, hunting, I suppose. Near
staring at a box and a string, wondering what the hell happened.
This has to work. But he was trapping near Wyoming's Platte River when he noticed an eerie fog begin to form above the water, which at first, in and of itself is not unusual. If you've ever been around water, that's where fog tends to form.
Yeah. But it is eerie.
The fog, yeah, and it always. We had a pond in our backyard at the house I grew up in, and it was a tiny little pond, and it's still you'd get that Silent Hill-y mist just coming off. It's almost weirder when it's coming off a specific object or location.
Yeah, it's scary, but it gets you kind of excited, doesn't it? It's man, I'm about to pay for everything I did wrong in life. That's pretty fun.
Yeah, so he noticed the fog, and as the fog continued to grow, he began to be able to make out the strange form of a ghostly sailing ship. It's like a clipper, something you would picture in an old 1800s, pirate ship type deal. Gliding silently, down the river. The ship's sails were covered in frost, and so was the crew, who stood huddled on the deck. As the ship drew nearer, Webb saw that the crew were gathered around a body that lay at their feet. And then when the ship was near enough for him to make out their faces, the crew parted, and to his horror, the body laying on the deck was that of his girlfriend. It was a prophetic vision, as his girlfriend would end up dying later that same day. So since then, the ship has appeared to a number of unlucky people. Each time as the ghostly sailors part and the corpse on the deck becomes visible, it's a vision of somebody that the observer knows, and that person always dies that very same day. So it's like a very quick, it's not like the Banshee, like you hear it and within 2 weeks somebody's going to die. It's like, yep, this person's currently dying right now.
Oh, wow. That's actually a really cool story. I
like boats and ghost ships to begin with, and it's kind of a neat wrinkle that, because a lot of times it's like, oh, it's a vision of your own death or whatever, and sure, of course that's scary. Like, I don't want some fucking ghost to show up and be like, Steve, you're gonna die in the next 4 days. But I like that it's like somebody that you care about. It's always somebody that's close to it. It's not just like, oh, that's the mailman. It's somebody that they're like either in a relationship with, or a family member, or a very close friend, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So since then, the ship has appeared to a number of unlucky people. I already said that. This was the fate that befell cattleman Gene Wilson and his wife after he saw the ship in 1887. The sight of his dead wife had understandably spooked him, so he immediately returned home. When he arrived, he found the house was burning and his wife's body was found about 100 yards from the structure. It didn't specifically say she died from the fire, but that was what my assumption was. Although these first two were guys who went home and then that day the women in their lives were found dead. And so then I started to think, what if this is just a really cool ghost story, but it used to cover up really terrible domestic violence,
Yeah.
The trapper went home and killed his wife, and then they're like, did you murder your wife? You're like, no, I couldn't have. I saw a ghost ship.
It's the old ghost ship out clause.
Yeah. How would I have seen the ghost ship if I was here murdering her? And they're like, good point. In 1907, a Victor Heeb, I think it's pronounced, a Hybe, was cutting wood along the riverfront when the ship sailed past. This time, as the boat drew closer, instead of them being huddled around a lifeless body, he could see a body hanging from a noose from one of the ship's masts. It was the body of his best friend, who had indeed been convicted of a crime and sentenced to hanging, but the last that Victor had heard, his friend had escaped prison and was currently on the run. But after seeing the ship, he found out that later that same day, his friend had been captured and hung. Which was interesting because that one was funny to me because it's like, oh no, my best friend, he got hung for the crime that he was convicted of.
Yeah. But it's got to be nice to catch him the same day.
Yeah.
Maybe
what happened is he saw the ship and he was so scared he kind of stumbled back into town, and right up to the sheriff he's like, my friend was hanging from the rafters, but I could have sworn he was hiding over at Jim's house. Oh, fuck. I shouldn't have said that.
Jim fucking ratted him out.
So, like most urban legends, there's still periodic rumors of sightings of the death ship, but nothing. These were the 3 stories where they had actual names and whatever. Although when I say actual names and whatever, I do not mean that these people were actually vetted and verified to be real people. That all 3 could be completely made up.
Yeah. But what's cool about a story like that is it's so entrenched in genuine supernatural.
Yeah, it's almost
stuff.
like the boat going down the river Styx, except
yeah,
there's a lot of really strong imagery that this evokes, and that's why I saw this one, and it was real short, and there's not a lot to it, but I like it. This was probably my favorite out of the 3.
Yeah, I like it too, and it's that kind of plausible, deniability thing that makes something that's totally an element of fiction like this But, you know, there's that part of your brain is like, well, you know, I don't fucking know what people saw. You might see the ghost, you know.
I mean, there's a lot of accounts just throughout human history of people when they have a loved one die, like having some kind of vision.
Right.
Whether you believe in that or not, you know, that falls squarely in that realm of, like, I would say that every scientific rational part of my brain wants to say, nah, that's stupid, but there's a lot of stories about it, and what do I know?
Yeah.
The other really cool thing about this to me is this is one of the few, like, ghostly sighting stories. All of these sightings occurred, like, around midday, like broad daylight on this river. So it's not one of these, like, oh, you know, of course this area is creepy. It's in the woods and at night and you see whatever, the fog coming in and it's dark. It's like these all were supposedly happen broad daylight.
Yeah.
And then
there's that kind of thing, though, that it's like you can never prove, but what makes it fun is, like, it's also the type of story you can never disprove because it's a ghost ship. And nobody's saying, like, no, I'm going to put, like, today we would be like, we're going to put these sensors in the water and see if a ghost ship trips our sensors, and we got a thermal camera set up on the water. And it's like all that bullshit that ruins these types of stories.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because my final note is one of the things I was reading, and this has to be completely tacked on, like just made up, but it said something about, attempts to photograph the ghost ship have never worked because the photographs always turn out to be either just like solid gray or you just see the fog but no ship. Yeah. It's like, wait a minute.
But also, like,
you're telling me somebody, like, it was just the idea that you're like, okay, so there's this ship, and if I see it, somebody I love is going to die. I'm going to go photograph it. It's like, but then somebody you love is going to die. Like,
to be fair, like, you know, I've played video games where it's like Wind Waker. There's ghost ships, and that first thing I tried to do was take a picture of it. You know?
Yeah, true.
And you get stuff if you do. So I've applied that to my life going forward. Is if I get a picture of a ghost ship at any point, I'll get rich.
Yeah,
but
it's true. But it's like, I love this person, but I could be the first person in human history to prove ghosts exist. So
yeah, I mean, you know,
sorry, Grandma.
It's not going to change anything anyway, whether I see it or not. They're making the claim. It's a matter of will I listen.
That's true, and technically they can't prove that seeing the ship causes the death. It could be that the death causes the sighting of the ship.
Yeah, that's how I looked at it.
Yeah.
But also, like you talked about, like, you know, it's in daylight and stuff, but it's like if it's heavy fog, it's that same effect of, like, you know, walking around on a dark night or something. Like, the human brain is trying to, like, it'll come up with shit, you know, when you can't see things clearly. Like, it wants to detect things. So you're really sensitive to movement. You're going to make shapes in your mind's eye, like, that aren't necessarily there, but it's just your brain is actively always trying to make sense of what's in front of it, you know? And like, you know, it wouldn't be to the detail of these legends, certainly, but I could see somebody, like, in a dense, foggy sort of situation thinking they made something out that they couldn't possibly have.
Certainly,
you know?
Especially like in woods, it would be really easy if this fog rolls in, you're catching sights of tree limbs and stuff through the fog, and that would look like ship's masts, and your brain just assumes ship because there's a river, like yeah. Or it's an actual ghost, and like I said, there goes Nana down the river Styx.
Yeah.
But that's, you know, we live in a day and age where if a family member dies, you tend to find out through, like, Facebook. I'd much rather find out through a ghost ship.
Absolutely. Fucking absolutely. I'd rather do anything through a ghost ship.
That's your Amazon Prime delivery is coming from ghost ship. I'd order a lot more stuff.
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Get on that, Bezos.
It would almost be worth everyone dying for how many minor trivial things I used the death ship for.
Man, I could really use a pizza right now. Sorry, brother.
And you just start looking at your neighbor really sad.
That's the thing. Well, you just start making friends with people you don't actually like, and being like, "You're my best friend."
No, it's gotta hurt, but that's why you order 2 pizzas.
Oh, crap, this order is wrong. I gotta call him back.
Yeah. I like the death ship. I think that's really cool.
So the last one, and probably the funniest one, because they didn't even bother to come up with like a great name for him, is the legend of Skinned Tom from rural Tennessee.
Of course.
Which is interesting to me because I thought pretty much all of Tennessee was rural Tennessee. I get that there's a couple big cities there, but yeah, you're basically talking hills and woods. So this might be hard to believe, but once upon a time in Tennessee, there lived a handsome, witty, and athletic man named Tom.
Bullshit. I've been to Tennessee. We're all fucking gross.
Women loved Tom, and Tom definitely loved women, but each time he'd woo a new lover, he'd quickly grow tired of her and move on to the next. I don't know why I started writing this like as corny as I could, but probably because it's a very corny.
Yeah, that's kind of a corny opening, no matter how you phrase it.
Tom was such a player that eventually there were no more eligible women left in town for him to date. So Tom branched out and started visiting nearby towns. Like, this all sounds like some guy at a bar in his, like, 50s, and he's fat and ugly, but he's talking about his, like, glory days in high school, where I dated literally every girl in town. I had to go to the next town over.
But it's also, you're talking about, like, rural Tennessee, so it's like, oh, wow, you
dated 3 girls.
You're the first guy to get plumbing. Fucking cool.
Yeah.
You're a real charmer.
So he started branching out, and at a nearby town is where he met Eleanor, which anybody named Eleanor in a story like this, you know, is bad news. She was beautiful with long blonde hair, blue eyes, and curves for days. They said curvaceous or something. I don't.
Curves for days.
Days, yeah. Unfortunately, she also had a husband, but that wasn't going to stop Tom. And Eleanor was, of course, helplessly attracted to Tom because he's Gaston. So the two began having an affair. She'd sneak out of the house at night, and the two would drive to a local makeout spot for some heavy petting, to use period-appropriate terminology.
Heavy petting. Awesome.
I've always loved that term. They didn't say that. I threw that in there because it's one of my favorite, like, ridiculous, like, instead of saying they were having sex, it's heavy petting. It
always sounded to me like, 13-year-olds who didn't know what sex was.
Right.
But feeling like they had to try. So it's just them, like, touching each other a lot. Like, not
totally sexed her elbow up.
No real, like, sex in it. But just like, I'll push your boob a little,
Heavily. So the excitement of sneaking around was, well, exciting for both of them. And
the thrill.
So they did little to hide their affair. So, of course, Eleanor's husband officially grew suspicious, which I like the way that this was written was like that everybody in town knew. And the husband was like, wait a minute. You keep going out at night.
It's like that Office Space thing. Like, I think she's cheating on me. And like, yeah, I know what you mean.
So he grew suspicious, and he told his wife that one day he said, I'm going out of town for the weekend. But instead, he hid in the woods behind the home. Sure enough, that night, Tom showed up, and Eleanor hopped in the car, and they headed to their favorite doing it spot. Which is interesting to me, because if the husband's supposed to be out of town, wouldn't you just, like, go inside at that point? Like, hey, we don't have to sneak around. But I guess that was their thing, is like...
Yeah, doing it in all the wrong places.
You need that gear shift poking you in the kidney. That's what really gets you going.
Yeah.
So, of course...
we go into the trunk for our passions.
So, of course, Eleanor's husband followed them. And just as things were getting hot and heavy in the back seat, or the front seat, whatever seat they were doing it in, the door suddenly flew open, and there stood Eleanor's husband with a deranged grin on his face and a hunting knife in his hand.
Which why is he stoked about it?
I don't know. Like, maybe he was a cuck all along, but then he is like morphed it into a new fantasy. Like, I'm going to be the one that strikes back.
Oh, no, this is where toxic masculinity destroys something else. So, like, he's a cuck, and he was into this. but he can't be into this because his reputation would be ruined. So
Right.
your only option is to horrifically fucking
But he's smiling the whole time because
person.
he got to watch him, get it on.
Yeah.
So I guess. I don't know. But So Tom was terrified, of course, and began begging and pleading for his life. "I'm not going to kill you," the husband said creepily. "No, what I'm going to do is much worse." So this basically turns into a creepypasta.
He's talking way too much, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Then he grabbed Tom by the ankles and drug him off into the woods. Which, if you remember at the beginning, it talked about how like handsome and athletic and like irresistible Tom was, and all of a sudden Tom's just letting some like guy drag him off into the woods.
Ultimately, Tom was a bitch.
Yeah. Eleanor could not see what was happening, but she could hear Tom's shrieks of pain and terror. Then suddenly the husband reemerged from the woods. His clothes were covered in blood. He had the same demonic grin on his face. But without a word, he got in the car and drove directly to the police station where he turned himself in. So, of course, authorities rushed to the scene. But when they searched the area, they made a gruesome discovery. Tom's skin had been removed and was draped from a high tree branch. But he had been skinned so skillfully that it had not killed him. Somewhere out in the woods, the skinless Tom was still alive. The knife was also nowhere to be found. So, of course, the legend is that to this day, Tom, now little more than a red and bloody skeleton, still haunts the area, taking out a deadly vengeance upon anybody who he catches sneaking out and having affairs in the woods, which I guess happens a lot.
Why does he get to take revenge on anyone? This is your own fault.
Exactly, and that's the weirdest thing is that he takes revenge.
What are you fucking mad at me for? You fucked a psychopath's wife.
And then
you heavy petted the unpettable. Yeah,
the unpettable. I love that. That's
the movie.
If Scorsese does. But yeah, that's exactly what I wrote. Like, I don't get it. Like, if you were going to exact revenge, wouldn't you go around killing jealous husbands? But instead, he's like, well, fuck, he got the best of me. I guess this is a new tradition. I better keep it going. Like,
yeah.
The other best part was that I found this particular story on a website called Scary for Kids.
Yeah.
It's like,
also, like, you know, the fuck you, Tom. Like, do your dirt on the low. Like, you kept the affair going for fucking ever. You fucked all over town. Like, you fucked up.
Yeah. You get skinned alive. I mean, that's really on.
You shouldn't be having affairs with married women anyway, but if you're going to, don't be a fucking idiot about it. Like,
I love the idea that
out.
You could skin somebody alive and they would stay alive. Like, because it's the way the legend reads, it's literally this giant block. It's a human like skin suit. Like, he had zero skin left. Yeah. And you could probably do that if you knew what you're doing while avoiding killing him from any like blood loss or that kind of thing. Although it'd be very difficult when I'd imagine they'd be like moving around a bunch.
Yeah.
But they would die of shock.
But apparently if you grabbed Tom by the ankles, it was like grabbing a chicken or some shit because he was just useless. Like,
the twist is he didn't even skin him with the knife. Tom was just like, I'm sorry. What if I take my skin off? Will that make it better? Like, yeah, Tom just stripped his own skin off.
It's just like, how is somebody that useless? Like, just say, oh, my ankles, I can't fight anymore. It's like, it wasn't like he put you in some MMA shit. He just dragged you away. Like,
yeah, like I like that there was apparently no attempt at like escape or anything.
Yeah,
and I like that the wife just sat there and like waited for her deranged husband to come back.
Yeah, I'm sure that was a very amicable divorce afterwards. He came back covered in blood.
Well, I wonder if he was like one of these guys like your acid bath killer where he's like, you found a skin but you didn't find a body. He can't charge me with murder. Best you can do is charge me with theft of his skin.
I mean, you know, to be fair, all we know is that he got dragged off into the woods. Right. You know, nobody knows what happened in those woods.
Right. So that was the third one. That was
like any like
that was my probably like most like just creepypasta-ish urban legend. Like,
no, I liked it because I like that cheesy horror shit. I will say this though, like, even in a dumb story like that, like if you want like some sort of gore thing to really like make me cringe, it's like flaying off skin. Yeah, you know, like because I immediately like, God, that must fucking sting. Like, it's really like, there's worse things that can happen, but it's like also like, to me, that's just like, I fucking hate that image.
Tara was watching I think it's called Red Sparrow or something, a Jennifer Lawrence movie. It's relatively new, last couple years, where she's and one of the killers in that, you know, that's more like the Russian mafia, like not even mafia, but like the Russia, like
secret police,
killer people, the ones that disappear people, and against like the American CIA, whatever. I didn't really watch the whole thing, but one of the guys in it, that's what he would do to his people to torture and kill them, he had this little like a tool that I imagine is a real tool because it's a relatively modern movie, and it was supposed to be something used for like skin grafting for like cosmetic surgery, and he would just sit and flay like strips of skin off of people.
Yeah.
And they were it was basically the size of like a razor you'd use to shave your face. But the idea of it cutting down just perfectly enough to take your skin off and leave that exposed, it's like, I'm sure that's an actual torture thing that those kind of people use, and that sucks.
Yeah, I fucking hate that. But I wouldn't hesitate if you went after my wife.
She'd been cheating on me.
I
like that they wasted
a cheating and a hooting and a heavy and a petting.
I like that they wasted half of the urban legend just talking about how Tom was this impossibly irresistible, like, woman's man. Like, you could have just jumped to they met and hit it off and they had an affair. Like, you didn't need to be like, well, he ran out of women in one town, so he started having an affair in another.
One of my favorite shows is Narcos, and in the last season, there's like a drug cartel kingpin, and his wife starts having an affair with like the driver of another kingpin, and the driver's just like the most goofy, fucking sleazy dirtbag dude.
I imagine it doesn't end well for him.
Oh no, it's, you know, it's fucking hell no. It doesn't end well for anyone. But like, it's always funny when you have to suspend that disbelief to be like, yeah, this woman would totally, knowing the world she's in, she would totally jeopardize that to be with some fucking greasy, fucking slimy mustache driver dude, knowing her husband's a fucking
lines.
What's up?
I bet he had the best pickup lines though. He's like, "Hey, did it hurt when you fell from the watchtower?" In
TV, you just have to smile a certain way, and then you're fucking in the next scene. It's great. I've
tried that in real life, and it does not go well.
Yeah, in real life, you smile a certain way, and next thing you know, you're trying to explain to the police that you just watched an episode of Narcos and you thought it would work.
Yeah.
But yeah, so really, you know, cheating's bad, you know, in general. But definitely don't do it in rural Tennessee.
Or at least, like, do a psychological profile of the spouse first.
Yeah. I don't know. A lot of this could be solved with healthy communication. You know? Because even if you have an open marriage, like, you don't have to be deceitful.
Excuse me, sir. If I have an affair with your wife, will you take all my skin and leave it in the woods?
No, I'll probably just beat the shit out of you. Okay, good.
That's worth it. She's pretty hot.
And now you're having a healthy affair.
Right. So, yeah, Ghost Ship was definitely my favorite out of the three, the Death Ship. And so, like, next time I've got a family member that's, like, on their deathbed, instead of, like, going to the hospital, I'm going to drive to Wyoming.
I'm going to go to the lake. Honestly, that's not a bad plan.
Yeah.
I wonder if my loved ones would hate it if, like, they were on their deathbed. And I'm like, well, I'm going fishing.
I'm going to go test this theory out, and if I catch some fish along the way, then, hey, bonus.
Yeah, that was probably my favorite, but that was good. That was a lot of fun. You know me, I live for that shit. So
yeah.
So yeah,
that was that.
Goodbye.
Try not to like have any affairs with.
Have affairs
women.
with me, all right?
Yeah, not me. Yeah, I'm happy, but
but I'm not, and I'm willing to drag you down with me. So hit me up on Tinder.
Please don't flay me.
Please don't flay me. Well, do what you got to do, okay? I'm not gonna say please don't flay me, but consider it. Before you do. I'm kidding, flay me.